my friends, and welcome back to Kev's Hobby Showcase. I'm, of course, Kevin. You may have also seen me on Tabletop Jones Productions, where John and I are the two idiots playing board games. And today, second week of the month, so that's when I usually do my comic discussions, and today is no different. Although it's going to be a bit of a different type of discussion this time, I always hope to spark a debate in the comic section, or just a discussion or whatever. But what I'm doing today is I'm not really covering any particular characters. I'm not covering any particular storylines. I just want to talk about comic collecting in general, because I've been doing this for most of my life, and I just want to just give my take on the whole thing. So yeah, it's basically and anybody who's seeing this on Patreon, yes, I am. This is my usual schedule. I know, and if you want to check out all my other videos on YouTube, they're there. The comic discussions that I try to spark, but I'm going to be posting them here as well. So by all means, if there's, I haven't really checked it, but if there's a way to comment, please do. I'm sure there is. Shows how much I've looked into it, right? Anyway. So basically, it's like, as far as for me, comic collecting started when I was a kid. I remember my parents told me that basically I wasn't really reading anything, and they wanted me to read something. Let me adjust this a bit better. Okay. Yeah, so, they wanted me to read something. So at the time, I had an uncle who was buying comics and reading them, so they asked him if he could buy any for me. So what he used to do is he used to buy them and then give them to me, and then, I would read them and I would keep them. So that's how I pretty much got started. And I think like the first stories I was reading were from like back in the 70s with the Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, Avengers. Some of the maybe some of the solo titles from that, but not too many. Some other generic titles like some that we'll call like Marvel superheroes or something like that. Another also X-Men. I was really kind of intrigued by them because I think at the time that I was starting to get some of those, so it may not have been. I think it was in the 70s, but it may have been more towards the 80s. It was when they were basically doing like the storylines where they brought in like they called it the newer X-Men, where it was Storm, Colossus, Nightcrawler, Wolverine. It was when they had those in there, and those were really the first ones I had read. I didn't really at the time I didn't know who the original X-Men were, but over time I kind of pieced it all together, especially as I got older and I started rereading all the issues that I had, because as a kid and I'm just reading. Looking at the pictures. I'll admit it. The artistry I always found fantastic. So it wasn't until later on I would reread everything and I would start paying more attention to the story, and that's when I was really really hooked, because the stories, in my opinion, were very riveting. They were able to really capture my attention, especially as a kid, because I wasn't really reading regular books. I would get bored very easily, to be honest. So maybe it was the art that drew me in, but then the stories kept me there. And so yeah, it was something, like I said, something I'd done since then. And when I remember, I think it was 1983. So when I turned 12, I started doing it on my own. I started buying them. I would take my allowance. I would go to a local little hole in the wall grocery store, and back then, there was 60 cents a piece. So I would be able to go to a store with $3 and come home with 5 comics, unless they were one of the double editions. Then I had to make a decision. Do I buy this and not this? And at times I'm like, I would leave out the special edition ones, and then I'm like, ah. And as I got older, when I had more money, I would kind of look back into the back issue bins of actual comic shops, and I would find them like, ooh, it's like, yeah, this is the one I'm missing. So. Yeah, and just I always wanted to know what was coming next, and that's why I just always kept on collecting them. So I kept on reading them, and I to this day I still enjoy them. Unfortunately, due to financial reasons, I haven't. It's been about 10 months since I've really been able to collect. So I'm not like up to current with everything that I read. And even then, even back then, I was still like months behind because of financial reasons. I am, like I said, I am divorced. And I'll kind of play into what I'm talking about in a little bit. So anyway, because of said divorce, my full paycheck isn't really mine, if you know what I mean, and so I'm not able to afford certain things that I was always able to afford. So one day I will. One day I'll be able to get it all back. But unfortunately, today's not that day. So anyway, yeah. So it's even so, I will every now and again try to pick up a trade if I can, and just reading old stories. I still have trades that I haven't really read yet because it's just for time reasons. But as it's like I had a whole bunch of them from sales from an old comic shop that I used to go to. Unfortunately, closed down, called Comic Book Jones. You've heard me and John. If you watch Tabletop Jones production, you've heard me and John talk about them all the time. 'Cause that's like where we not only that's not only where we met, but it's also where we both started playing the games with each other. So yeah, they because they allowed us to do it there. And I just always found like the community of people who would read comic books to be mostly welcoming, mostly very accommodating. As far as like talk about this one, talk about this title, talk about that title, talk about this character, talk about that character. I mean, yes, there are some that go a little bit overboard and about them as if they're real people. Most of us know they're not. Just to get that out there. Um, and then of course with the comics it transfers over now. Excuse me, especially with Marvel because that's like the main books that I read. You got the MCU, which is basically seeing all the characters that I've been reading for so many years brought to life on the big screen, which for me is like the biggest thing. I mean, I was like, I remember back in the mid to late '80s when the Batman movies were coming out. Of course, I went to see him because it was comic book, and I do enjoy the DC characters. I just never really read them because I chose to collect Marvel instead of DC. And I remember watching them and then wishing that because I heard rumors of a Spider-Man movie. Like back then, it was like a Spider. Like I forget who they said was gonna play Spider-Man, but it was like something like there was like Jack Nicholson as the Green Goblin and Arnold Schwarzenegger as Doctor Octopus, and I was like, oh, that would be excellent, that would be awesome, that would be great. Never happened, but it would have been nice. Then there was talks of what was it? There was like another movie I forget, but I know but back then when Marvel movies came out, first of all, of course there was no MCU, but a lot of them were so bad. They really were. I mean, I remember there was a Captain America movie I had I had read in an article saying how bad it was. I'm like, nah, it can't be that bad. And I actually found it at a video store, so I rented it. And I watched it. I was like, oh, yeah, it's that bad. It was pretty bad. I remember seeing I was at a Star Trek convention and I saw like get people set up and they're selling all different things, not always Star Trek related. And I saw videotape for $20 Fantastic Four movie that was supposed to be out in probably I think the mid '80s. I don't forget exactly when, maybe even the early '90s. I'm not exactly sure when. And I watched it and it was pretty bad. But now they're of course they're a lot better now. So it's more enjoyable. And yeah, so it's just over the years, just did a lot of reading, with this stuff, and a lot of good stories, and yeah, like I said, with divorce and all that, my ex-wife never really liked the fact that I did any of this, and always tried to get me to give it up. Matter of fact, she pretty much I think one time demanded that I give it up. After 5 months, I said to her, I said, listen, no, I'm going back. I said, I'm not doing this anymore because there's nothing really, it was like promises made and promises were not kept. And then I said, screw this. I'm gonna, this is like one of the few joys I have in my life. Let me have it, and unfortunately, I think it did lead to my divorce. But looking back, there were other issues that I'm not going to get into, and I don't regret what's happened. I'm actually, I'm not going to say happy, but I'm not going to say I'm devastatingly sad. Things happen the way they did, and that's that. That's all I'm gonna say about it. So anyway, yeah. So it's I've been doing this, like I said, since 1983. So we're talking well over 40 years. I've been collecting comics and reading them and enjoying them. Like I said, mostly what I collect is Marvel. For a while there, I was collecting almost every Marvel title, but I did scale back because there were a bunch of titles. I'm like, why am I collecting this? So I had to start really seeing which books I was enjoying, which books I wasn't. But for a time, I mean, there's other companies that I collected from. That there was Dark Horse Comics that, for a time, had the franchise of Alien and Predator, which now it seems like Marvel has that too. And one of my favorites from there was when they did Alien versus Predator, and which kind of set the tone for the first movie that they did. Although I think they should have followed it to the letter, if you ask me. Also, for a while there, there was a very briefly there was a independent title called Virgin, Virgin Comics. I don't know if I have all of what they collected because I was buying all I was buying like up whatever I can grab. I don't think I have everything, but I do have a lot of them. One day I'm probably going to sell them because I mean their worth might have gone up. I don't know yet. I haven't really researched it, but I do have those issues. They're all and like it, for everybody who does collect, you bag and board all your comics to keep them nice, to keep them hopefully at least near mint condition. Depending on where you're storing it. I mean, I do have comic book boxes that I keep in. Everything's in my basement, which is for the most part a finished basement. Although I did lose some when I had a flood down there once. I did lose some of the books down there, but I didn't. Thankfully, I didn't lose a lot. I lost very little, thank God. So yeah, and then there was another one of Valiant. I had missed out when it first came out, but then they kind of brought it back early 2000s, I think. I'm not entirely. I'm not entirely. I don't really. Maybe not early 2000s. Maybe in the 20 teens. I don't really remember when it started coming out again. But I decided to collect, and I did not regret it. The stories were very, very good. I really enjoyed the characters, especially characters like Bloodshot and Exo Man of War. I really enjoyed those titles. I think the most. Not that I didn't enjoy the other ones, but I enjoyed those two the most. I think I even covered my favorite characters from Valiant Comics in one of my videos. And now DC. Do I have DC Comics? Yes, I have actually a bunch of trades when they were doing the New 52. I don't really collect them I didn't really collect them like individually, like individual issues. I mean, I'm okay with DC Comics. I just didn't really read a lot of them while I was growing up, as much as especially with because I was mainly a Marvel guy. I mean, I know there was criticism towards DC. I mean, I can't attest for any of it because, like I said, I didn't read them. But someone was trying to say that the difference between DC characters and Marvel is that DC characters were a little too perfect and a little too well liked by everybody, whereas the Marvel characters were, they all had flaws, and not all of them were liked by the public. So it kind of made them, in that person's opinion, made them better, and I could see that, I could see, where they would say that. But yeah, to me, I find it to be a great hobby. I really enjoy it. Now, can it get expensive? Yes, absolutely it can. Can it take up a lot of room? Yes, absolutely it can. The room issue could be solved if you are okay with having your comics digital. If you don't mind them being digital, then I think there's a site. I think it's a monthly subscription. I don't remember how much, and I don't remember what the site is called. I think it might be called Marvel Unlimited, or maybe not. I don't remember. I don't remember if it was just for Marvel Comics or if it was for comics in general. It's like if you pay like a monthly fee, and you were actually able to access every issue of every title that you can find. It may have been just for Marvel Comics. I'm not entirely certain. But yeah, I mean, hey, if anybody knows what the site is, please put it in the chat. So this way, anybody who might want to, partake in that they, at least they know where to go, or at least they know, like what to type in for their search. But yeah, I mean, if you like that, if you're okay with that, then that's the way to go. It saves a lot of room because you won't be having comics all over the place. However, I think we all know digital devices don't last forever. That's the thing. So, yeah, so it's like if you are in the mood for reading and your digital device goes kaput, then you ain't reading anything. The other thing is that if you like to go to conventions and you like to get things signed, that's kind of, you're not going to be able to do it if you read everything digital. Because it's like you can't hand them like your tablet and then have them sign the glass display case. It's just not going to work. that would be kind of dumb anyway, because then now you'd have this thing scrolled on the thing, and yeah. I mean, I know it's a pretty dumb analogy, but that's pretty much how I feel about digital comics. I mean, do I think it's useful for a lot of people? Probably yes. For some people, absolutely not. I'm gonna be. I would wind up being one of them. I mean, for regular books, I did go to a Kindle so that I wouldn't have books all over the place like regular books. But comics, it's different. It's different for me, because I've even brought trades to conventions to be signed. I remember one time I was at New York Comic Con, probably the last time I was able to get to New York Comic Con, and Chris Claremont was there. And I had when they used to have the Marvel Masterworks, I had the first. Well, I have the six volumes, and I only brought the first five. I should have brought the sixth one because I didn't even bother to look. I didn't even know that Chris Claremont was part of that one too. I should have brought all six of them, but I brought the first five, and he was like, he signed all five of them, no problem. And I was like, wow, great. I mean, yeah, it was a lot of weight in the backpack I had. It was a lot of weight on my back while I was carrying them, but it was worth it. I have his signature on all five of them. So yeah, but you can't do, you won't be able to do that with a digital comic. So it's there's pros and cons to just about everything, I guess. And yeah, and as far as like the pros of collecting comics, it's very enjoyable. Artwork is usually great. Stories are usually great. I mean, are there occasional bad art and bad stories? Yes. If you don't like it, don't get it. you know, um, it's a great way to pass time. It's like if you're bored, there's plenty of other destructive things you can do while you're bored, or you can read a comic. That's what I usually do. Especially that's what I used to do when I was a kid. It's like if I was bored, I'd take out my comics, and I would just start reading. And I would pretty much be pretty much occupied for however long I needed to be occupied until I had to do whatever it is my parents needed me to do, or in most cases just come down to dinner. But the cons are, I guess, if you're not making a lot of money, you're not gonna be able to buy much, especially nowadays, because comics they're not 60 cents a piece anymore, not by a long shot. I think for most Marvel comics, you need at least $3 just to get one, you know, and even then you may not have enough. So it's yeah, it can be pretty pricey. And does it take up a lot of space? Yes, it does. But you could always work around those things if you need to. So anyway, I just wanted to take this time to talk about like I said, and this is to me is the joys of collecting comics. I mean, if you have your own stories about your own collecting your own time collecting books, or if you just want to say something in general, the chat's always open. Feel free to to make a comment. Feel free to say anything, and just know that I want this to be a nice space where we can for anybody who's into this stuff to kind of share your thoughts with other people who are into this stuff. If you're not into this stuff and you want to say something, please just keep it keep it nice, keep it civil, keep it within the realms of good taste. Don't go around calling us nerds. Don't go around calling us this, names and, this and that. We don't need that here. I mean, if you want to do that, just, you know, just say it. Just say it to the screen, and don't type it in. All right. So just try to keep it nice and civil, and for those of us who enjoy this stuff, to just keep it a positive atmosphere for all of us. All right. So anyway, I mean, I don't mean to get a little preachy there, but I just don't want. I'm not here to cause conflict. I'm here to hopefully entertain and to make it a nice, calm experience. Because you want to get riled up. There's plenty of other things you can access on YouTube, and I'm sure there's plenty of other things on Patreon that you can get all riled up over. Not here. Here we like to keep it calm, like to keep things happy and joyous, and hopefully, like I said, entertaining. So anyway, that's what I have for today. On this subject. And, so thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for indulging me. And, all of you out there, you have a great day. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you again.